Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hi, it's me, Eddie Phillipswick, coming to you live um, to do the interactive, Erudition Interactive Black History show that we do every Thursday. Um, Give a couple of moments for people to come online and to join us. Um, we do this show to provide information on Black history while at the same time um, what we are attempting to do is to cover those things that aren't necessarily covered um, in our children's um, history lessons at school. Again, my name is Eddie Phillips. I am the CEO of the Erudition Network, and it is always my privilege to be on here um, to do this show. Today, I have my son with me, my oldest with me. He's going to be joining me. This is kind of a sensitive, little bit of a topic that we're going to cover today um, because, we got a lot going on in our community, in the black community. Um, and a lot of times, uh, we don't understand or we don't get our history to really get it and get a full understanding as to why certain things are happening um, in our collective community and in society. So whilst I am sitting here waiting to see, if we're going to get anybody that would be on, um, I wanted to talk today um, about women, right? Black women and the issues that we are having in our society uh, with black women and the stereotypes that are being used against them. I think what I should also say is if you are joining us for Erudition, I would ask that you click on the link that is on either on our pages to allow StreamYard to see your comments. A lot of times when we do this show, we don't. I've noticed that we don't see a lot of the interactive comments for those of you who haven't clicked that StreamYard link in the session advertisement. You can either do that by going to my regular Facebook page, or you can go on the Erudition page and you will see it on there also. Um, See, we have one person on here, so I'm going to go forth. I don't like to belabor and as we run up on time, but I know everybody. This is the end of the day for a lot of people, and everybody's starting trying to get on. Um, so, like I said, today we're going to talk about African American women and the a lot of the stereotypes that have been used against them. And one of the reasons why we're getting into this conversation today and taking it from a historical perspective is because, quite honestly, uh, the history behind it is nefarious. It's evil. It's fraught with a lot of evil, and we I don't know if a lot of us who are watching the influencers out here really understand that history. So I'm gonna start this. Teddy, I had muted your mic because there was a little bit of humming that was going on in your mic. Um, I don't know what that is, but there's something that's humming really loudly. So, but while you're doing that, while you're trying to figure that out, um, I'm going to. Um, I don't know why it's doing that. I'm going to go in. And I want to show a video that we saw recently the other day. Maybe turn your mic down a little bit, or your actual mic, the mic you have. Maybe that's it. I don't know, but I'm not going to belabor it. But one of the things is we're gonna look at some of these gentlemen that I'm talking about. Let's get into this lesson. So one of the guys recently that has been greatly seen and been getting a lot of play on Facebook, YouTube, and things like that um, is this guy um, named Kevin Samuels. And I'm going to show a clip of Kevin Samuels. And I want you to watch it. I want you to see what I'm talking about. And so I'm going to share my screen. Give me a moment here. And hopefully this video will share with you. All right. So this is YouTube, but I'm going to go off here, and I really want you to see this and to see what we're talking about here. Let's go.
The audio's a bit low.
Call from Eric Cloud.
So as you see right there, Kevin Samuels, right? He went in and he went in on that young lady. He's just an example, right? He's one example. I'm going to show you something else here. This one is kind of old too, but this is another young black man, Tommy Sotomayor, and what he said about black women.
Yeah, again, the audio's a bit low.
They like the fact that she doesn't have an attitude, and they like the fact that she don't have any kids out of wedlock. Well, we do. Nobody likes those things. Why would someone say that they're talking negative about you when you keep putting weave in your own hair, when you keep having kids out of wedlock, and when you think that having an attitude is a fucking plus? Why would you get mad at this girl for saying exactly what you do? She didn't.
You got a big dick? Sweet woman, but you're not getting it.
You're being so mean.
I'm not being, don't tell me I'm being mean. I'm about to be mean. I get tired of you broads telling me I'm being mean because you cannot handle the goddamn truth. You called my show on a day that you ain't even supposed to be here. And I honored the call and sat here and tried to help you. And I'm telling you.
So, as you see, I'm not going to go further with these guys. You notice that, give me a second, I'm trying to reconnect my mic here. You will notice that these men berate our black women. They berate them. They say things to them that are abusive. And they're doing it under the guise of helping them, right? Now, I don't support anything that these men have said, and I personally think that a lot of what they're doing is very, very, very abusive. Abusive. Uh, but I want to get into the history of this, right? I don't care how many people we have on. I really want to get into the history of this. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this today is because we have a nefarious history in the African American community um, of downing our black women. The history comes from slavery. It is hugely routed with ideas of misogyny, of abuse, and a lot of us don't know why that is. Many of us even ignore the fact that it happens, and we think that when men like this talk about how the black woman is not being right or whatever and make these illicit statements, and I'm sorry if some of the things that they said are horrible, because they are horrible, we need to understand that and speak to that. One of the things that disturbs me is historically, when you compare black and white women, what we have found is that they do this, history does this comparison where they have painted these young black women or these black women as loud, insatiable, unsatisfied, uncompromising, promiscuous, violent, and you can choose many other words. But what they call her predominantly is a Jezebel, right? They treat her like a Jezebel. They go about things that they say as if she's a Jezebel. And unfortunately, it has stuck with a lot of our young black women, and now some of them are emulating the very lie that has been told since slavery. So, why is that? I was reading probably about 2 years ago a book by K.S. Samuel, in which they were saying that, they wrote about the idea of the sexualization and the seduction of the mulatto or the dark woman, and how that was played upon during slavery. The black woman had no control of her body during slavery. As a matter of fact, when they were sold, they were displayed naked. They were put on the auction block naked. And when you have that kind of situation going on, you as your first introduction into what is about to be your life coming off of that slave ship, and you're there and people are clutching you, grabbing you, looking at you, and treating you as if you're a piece of flesh, that has a profound effect on your mind and your body. I'm going to get certain things we don't talk about also. We don't, the idea of the quadroon. Teddy, do you know what a quadroon is?
No, I don't think I've ever heard that one before.
So in a lot of our history, it's not passed. We don't pass on the idea of the quadroon. And what that is that's saying that you have a quarter of black in you. The idea, I'm going to mute you again, you're still loud. Check whatever that is. The quadroon is a person who has, that's that quarter of black in them, but you're still considered black. And they were mulattoes, right? That's what we also termed them. But quadroon was more specific. They had different statements as to what these people were by whatever amount of black blood or family that they had in their lineage. But a lot of mulattoes, females, who were free, and some who were not, participated in this situation that was called a placage. Do you know what a placage is?
No.
So, a placage, a Placagee, was an arrangement. It was something that was put into place to basically make a mulatto woman a concubine to a white man. So it was a form of prostitution, right? Where they would have what they call quadroon showcases, quadroon balls, and white, eclectic men or affluent men would come and meet these young ladies and basically buy them into a contract where they agreed to take care of them. Some agreed to take care of the women and their children that may come from these relationships, because it was illegal for them to be married, but it was okay for them to go into this placage sort of relationship. Sean Anthony said they tried to manipulate black people, but instead began to envy black. There's some truth to that. There's some envy there, but also a lot of it was the idea of another subjugation, right? The idea of a concubine again pushed this idea of loose, unethical woman who would give her body. But honestly, is that fair to think of it that way? Because quite honestly, if she was free, she wasn't fully free. She was in a society that if it was found that she was a quadroon, that she was merely passing, she could be pushed into a very harmful and hurtful situation. So when we see men like we saw earlier, that I put on earlier, who talk about black women, I don't think a lot of them understand the idea of what that black woman had to go through for that time and how bad it was. What do you think about it, about some of the stuff that we just talked about, Teddy?
I think that the black woman just gets a bad rap all around, because there isn't a reason that a human being should be displayed and judged by her body. In today's world, we heavily judge people on how they look. That's why you see so many filters on cameras nowadays. On, okay, I look like this. They call it the flawless filter. We looked at photoshopping the other day, and it's so bad that they would try and take away what's natural and turn it into something that's unnatural, and then turn it into a competition. So it doesn't surprise me that this has happened. It's good to know the origin of why. But
so I don't typically,
I still don't know why would the black man, knowing what she's been through, why do we rate them to such a level, a standard?
Well, some of it, Teddy, quite honestly, comes with the idea that they don't really know. And a lot of them, be honest with you, don't really want to know. And when you live in a mentality of not wanting to know, I don't typically get on here to share any poetry whatsoever. You guys know that I'm very funny about that. I don't think I'm a poet, so I'm very funny about it. But a few years ago, I wrote a poem about the black woman. And when I wrote that poem, it came to me out of nowhere, and I was very receptive, and I thank God for it. But it talks about this idea of what I just told you, and I'm gonna go into that a little bit as we go forward. What the name of the poem was called "Our Forgotten Grandmother." The idea of what these young women had to go through. And I am not an orator, so please bear with me. But I'm going to go through this poem real quick because I think we need to understand what they went through. The poem says, "She stood there alone. She was an innocent girl, marginalized by the compuissance of man. The auctioneer's hammer came down, and the centurion's screams howled out lustfully towards the new prey on the stand. Bare and surrounded, she stood there crying on the stand. Eyes peered at her lustfully as she saw young men licking their lips. A woman in the crowd mentioned she could have more children because of the width of her hips. An auctioneer's helper came and squeezed her nubile breasts. She cried out for help to her father's tongue, but no one knew or cared about what she said. Laughter roared out from the crowd as another helper told her to be silent as he roughly pulled her hair and pushed back on her head. She was deemed to be property. They sold her, whole, and stifled all her mortal protests. She lost her bones, muscles, and blood, and later her new owner stole her innocent flesh. No one cared as her tears fell down like rivers while she was led away to an unknown land. She had no father, mother, or brother to snatch her away from the corrupt owner's hand. As this owner groped at her body and whipped away the joy she had inside, he stole her away into Babylon to strip away all hope, love, and pride. She was our grandmother. She exists in every one of our familiar lines. And many of us have never thought about her. Many of us have never considered that what she gave up and left behind. So many of our people don't even know her name. We are all born of her bosom, but too many of us forget her pain. She was stripped of her moral destiny to be the nurturer and the mother of both black and white man. She provided guidance and love to all of our brothers and gave birth to an America she was never allowed to understand. I cry for our grandmothers. I know that heaven has elevated them to a worthy throne. They now stand in splendor, a long way from their auctioneer's block, where they felt helpless, worthless, and alone. I don't typically read poetry on here, but the idea of what they went through is so important to me. And it's so important for us to understand. The nudity that they had to go through, standing there and being groped, the idea of the lewd and promiscuous, made them feel vulnerable, and they had no way of being able to get away from that. They were in servitude. And contrary to what is depicted in the media, contrary to what is said in movies, and you see these shows where they show black people in England, and those people are sitting here as if they were, as if nothing was wrong at that time, and that they were treated as equal citizens. When the Moors came, right, the Moors were seen as lusty. They were seen as people who would try to take away your innocence. I didn't say that. This was the idea of Shakespeare, and the idea that went on even in England. The lewd behaviors, the sexual innuendos, the things that were being done. And because they were set there to be seen as sexual entities, that gave these men and women the idea that they could sell them into prostitution, that they could send them to their sons, brothers, uncles, and that these black women could be used as tools of lust. And quite often, that is what happened. It was not uncommon for a black woman to be put into a situation where she was raped. It was not uncommon also that young black girls young black girls, and this is something that I know is not covered in history. Young prepubescent girls were told by the slave master and owners to have sex because a pregnant slave was money. And they told these young girls to have sex and encouraged it and even sent them out to their families, their white families, to be used in this way in order to get them ready for having sex and bearing life. Now, when we consider that and we listen to the ignorance that I showed at the beginning of the show, then we have to understand how foul that history is. They claim that it was okay because these black savages were from Africa and they didn't dress in Africa. They were very open in Africa. And because of that, they felt that they were always lustful, wanting it. And they treated them that way. When there was and I want to point out too, that even the abolitionists believed this. I pulled an article today where there was a guy named James Redpath. And I've never come across Redpath's writing, but in 1859, Redpath said he wrote that slave women were gratified. They were happy to receive the criminal advances of Saxons, of whites. His view was that they asked for it because it was in their nature. Now, this was an abolitionist who said he didn't believe that blacks should be in slavery. But that same abolitionist, right, didn't have a problem with saying that black women were promiscuous. Go ahead, Teddy. I'm going to let you talk.
I don't. That was a lot. When you look at the history of it and you think about how women nowadays, or what's portrayed to be anyway. Some people are not like that. I have been blessed enough not to see that all women portray themselves in such ways. But when you're wearing shorts up to your navel, when you're exposing all this skin, and our women lack confidence, and they think that that's the only way that they can get attention or attract a mate is to expose yourself. And all it does is, what you're going to do is you're going to, hate to say it, but you're going to attract a pimp. Because it's not just white men anymore that are looking at you with lascivious eyes. It's everyone. And when you display yourself in such a manner, you're going to attract somebody's attention. It just ain't going to be the attention that you want.
So, I like to do this. I like to show pictures. And this is a deep lesson. This is a deep situation. And I know that a lot of people are sensitive to this. But I really want us to delve into this history and understand. So I'm going to show my screen kind of like I did last week. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. I know sometimes when we do these screen shares, so I just Googled this. So what we're talking about here is the Jezebel caricature. The Jezebel caricature of black women. And we can go and we can look at what's going on. You can look at performers of today, and we can see a lot of that is still a part of our culture, right? The black woman overly hypersexualized and treated as if she has no agency of her own other than what is on her body. There's nothing, no worth. But I want to touch on something here. Remember earlier I said how the slave owner would sexualize even the young black girl. I mean, the young prepubescent black girl. And you see this picture right here?
Yeah.
Where it says, honey, I'm waiting for you. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
And you see how, what does that face look like? Does that look like a grown woman?
No.
So they would do things where they would put a child's face on a female, a black woman's body and show breasts and hypersexualize them even as children. And so when I make that point that is not covered in our history books, it is horrible to think that. But this actually happened, where they taught these young black girls at an early age that sex was a part of her servitude. When you look at, there's a man who wrote a book, William Bosman, he described black women as fiery and warm, so much more hotter, right? Hot constitution. They're continually contriving stratagems to gain a white or black lover at all ages. This was his belief. And so when we see this idea of black men tearing down black women, it angers me. Because historically, what we are not understanding is the way that they treated our women.
And we're repeating history.
Biamello and Friedman, there's a book they wrote, it's called Intimate Matters. And it talks about the hierarchy and what happened on these plantations. And in one part of the book, they say a slave woman, she says, when he make me follow him in the bush, what use to me to tell him no? Because he has the strength to kill me. He owes my life or my death. Tyson said, no matter the race, that there are social. What have become norms and attention is more important than anything else. It happens before in the roaring 20s, 50s, and 70s. It's more widespread now due to the access to technology and streaming. They can also make thousands of dollars a day without leaving the home. The middleman has been cut out. That is true.
Yeah.
Of the whore mentality, of the slut or whatever. And I hate to use those terms, but I'm using the terms that they used. When I said that they were an auction naked, let's look at the reasons why we think we see that. We already discussed that a lot of the slaves were auctioned naked, with all their privates and all things out. They were clutched on, grabbed, and things were done to them. But we also have to understand that they were encouraged to get pregnant. They were encouraged to impregnate, and they were encouraged to get pregnant. Because that was money, and that was the ability for the master to sell whatever came out of that woman. Remember, we talked about that.
Yes. Chattel slavery.
They owe everything that comes out of that woman, no matter whether it was created by a white man or a black man. And so when you see people who want to make money, as Tyson said, they are acting as that man, that middleman, that pimp, right? They were stripped. What the word, I was trying to find that word. I was looking through my notes. It's called anticipatory socialization. And what that meant is they told these women to have sex and do these things to anticipate having children later on to benefit the master. When you see these movies or you read your books, do you know that the slave master sat here, right, at dinner parties, at tables? Just like when you see people, and I hate to use this term, who pedigree and sell dogs. And they talked about, hey, young Sarah is of age and I want to let such happen with her, and I know you, and this is what they talked. This is what they did.
Yeah, and you know what's so crazy about it? Today, women of today have no problem calling themselves dogs. It's almost they use the same way as we use the N word.
My sister said, I see that it's just the time. Today's time, music is a major problem. It is.
Yes.
Well, music is another avenue to be able to utilize and to sell this propaganda.
But music, as anybody who grew up on Schoolhouse of Rock, music sticks with you. Sesame Street uses it. All these kids' programming, if you look at it, it's always a hymn of some sort. Gospel songs, it'll stick with you because repetition and rhythm. And when you have all of that in music and you're advertising ignorance, you're going to beguile ignorance. And now our women think, okay, well, let's take for example, Beyonce's "Put a Ring on It." How all you can do all this if you give yourself all this to this man, give everything you have to him, and then if he don't put a ring on it, well, that's his fault. On to the next.
But see, these men put that out too, Teddy. We saw earlier, right, that,
Oh, yeah.
of men, of black men who, because you don't see a lot of white men doing this, but you see a lot of black men getting on here, ragtagging and tearing down our women. And my point for today's interactive is to talk about that history. Why is that? Do you not know that slaves rarely, because they couldn't, they rarely had venereal diseases. They rarely slept with their own family members. They rarely were promiscuous. Even when the master tried to force them to have sex, slaves didn't believe in it. They had slave marriages because they wanted to be honorable people. They wanted to do what was right. They were not animals, they were human beings. And so unbeknownst to the master, a lot of times, initially in the beginning of early American slavery, they would run off or only associate with that slave who which they were actually in love with or had a relationship with. But they had to be careful because master at any point in time, if you didn't sleep with who I wanted you to sleep with, because he had bucks, he had ideas of how he was going to breed, could sell you to someone else, could have them could actually hire bucks to come over and rape you, forcibly make you. Now, these are horrendous things. But we have to understand that chattel slavery was symbiotic, and I say that a lot. Because if you don't understand that two entities working and feeding, right? Rather one is primary and feeding the most or not, they're going to have an effect. Some part of you is touching me, is corrupting me, doing something to me and my thought process. Tyson said our bodies were ancestors were expected. They wanted our bodies because healthy, strong, and they were. Also in regards to how beautiful they were. These days, our bodies and talents were exploited on sports fields with less clothes. Yeah, the easiest way roads have been created to make it out. We choose the military. That got us ahead. I do agree, my brother.
It's funny. We just sat there and watched athletes perform because they're performing for the Olympics because it was postponed, and that's true. And we know black women are built different, and when you have all of this hanging as you run, it's like, oh wow.
Well, and then you watch them, right? They like it. The idea of
and it sells because you tune into the Olympics because you see that.
Well, it's gonna sell. Black women are beautiful. They always have been beautiful. Regina said, but the producers, owners, and record companies are white. They allowed the rappers to put out these songs to degrade the black women because it made the record companies rich. And she said that should be, but they're white producers. I mean, if we really get into the idea of just how bad they have marketed black people, black women particularly. When I shared that screen earlier, I'm gonna share it again. There's a picture on here. I'm gonna try to bring it up. You see this picture right here? Martini, anyone? And they got the black woman on here. These are actual advertisements, ashtrays, and things that were used to sell things off of black women, off of the sexuality of black women. And way too often, these marketing tools worked. They worked, right? There were tools that were used at straw holders, I remember reading about, in which they went from the age of 20 all the way to 40, showing the breasts of black women and how they were it got very vulgar. And they laughed at it. This was a joke. And this was as of 1960. That was not in the 1800s. They were still doing this. Because it was marketable. So when we look at people like Beyonce and all of them, let's get into that. Let's ask this question. Why do you think that it's still going on today?
Because it sells.
Well, why does it sell? We're smarter. We're smarter people, right? Why does it sell?
Because it's a quick way. It's a quick money grab. You can look online if they haven't reached out to you already. It's always a get-rich-quick scheme of, well, I have it. You have... I didn't even know such a thing existed. There's such thing as an OnlyFans on Instagram, where you are basically paid to be your own hoe and pimp and collect. So when you have it like that, why not? And you get paid millions of dollars for it, because lots of people are still going to tune into that type of perverted mindset.
I said, I never understood why men doing the same sport were fully clothed and women, little girls, are putting the tiniest things they can find. There are no black men in charge of these leagues. If someone chose to put them in these clothes. And that's what we wanted to talk about, that history. If you don't think that there is a pedophilic history that is underlying in black history, then that's why we wanted to talk about that. Because it's there. Because that's what they told them, and that's what is believed. But Teddy, to your point, I always look to film, and it's not just because I was a film student. I look to film because visual is everything, and I teach you all this. I tell you guys this: visual is everything. When you have people who can showcase, we always talk about Birth of a Nation. We always talk about movies, Gone with the Wind and things like that, the Mammies and everything else, right? But what we don't talk about too often, and I try to do it in one of our lessons that I did on Erudition, is the idea of film, black exploitation. We think black exploitation is gone, and it's not. It's not. Virginia said it sells for the love of money. Yes, the love of money pushes it every day. But I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna try not to go too deeply in this. But when we look at film, let's go back to the 70s, right? I think in that one stream, and people, I encourage you to go watch it, where I talk you through the different parts of black film. But coming in the exploitation era, one of the very first exploitation movies was Sweetback's Bad Ass Song. And in that movie, we see the idea of the pimp mentality form. Sweetback is supposed to be this guy who is righteous and defends these black militants, and there are parts of that movie that are honorable. But there are a lot of parts in the movie where It's particularly, you may not remember Mario Van Peebles, but some of the people out there are old enough to remember. Mario Van Peebles at 10 years old was in that movie. And there was a part in that movie where 10-year-old Mario Van Peebles is being taught by a prostitute on how to have sex. And that's the reason why the name of the movie is Sweetback, because Sweetback meant he was good at sex, right? And even though Reginald will tell you, the guy who directed it, and Bill Cosby gave money to produce it, he will tell you that this was honorable. And there are some honorable things to this movie. But at the heart of it, Sweetback's love making there's a scene specifically at 10 years old for it put in there because Reginald understood that is what pushed some people to the movies. That's what some of the white folks who sit in the back, they wanted to see. And honestly, we had been conditioned to think that that's what we wanted to see. The pimp mentality, the super black sex machine. James Brown said, I'm a sex machine. Right? And we put that mentality out there. So when we look at what the black man was being taught, and then I want you to go think about what the black woman was being taught. You can look at films like Shaft, Superfly, The Mac. And a lot of times in those movies, and I challenge the audience to go look at it, you will see this black man, super black man, show up to the house, right? And there'd be an intelligent, academic degree black woman that was there at the house, or he went to see her. And he'd tell her, first thing come out, and a lot of these movies used to trip me out as a kid. He said, go make my dinner. Come on over here, baby. And he'd grope all over it. That was her scene. Sometimes that was the only time you saw her in the movie. Was for him to sexualize her, right? And then go back out in the street and go do whatever. And so we programmed ourselves to think of a hypersexualized black man, a docile black woman who can't be opinionated. She could be smart as long as she shut up. And we have to understand the history of that, the power of image.
And that goes into what they said, what America was founded on all along. Last 2 lessons ago, we just talked about how there was the cowboy and his God wrapped in an American flag. They see this, and in the Bible, they want the woman to be submissive. That's really all they wanted. And you see it with white and black women. As long as they're subservient, they ain't got a problem with it. And that's really all in man's mind that they want women.
But we got to be careful, Teddy, because it's a game played on both sides here. Philip said that was just about all those black movies in the 70s, pushes, pimps, and prostitutes, every day, and that was an image where we made the pimp and the thug and the whore and everybody into heroes. You look at movies like Foxy Brown, like Coffee. You look at these films and you say to yourself, wait a minute, but it was hyperized fiction that now many people see as a reality because film conditions. You know, let's get into another part of that. Let's talk about you. I used to watch wrestling as a kid, so we talked about hypersexualized. Let's because we run out of time. Let's talk about something else here. Let's talk about the Sapphire character. Do you know what the Sapphire is?
Was she a warrior?
No. Sapphire, right? The Sapphire caricature is a loud, rude, stubborn, angry, controlling heifer, who just I'm just telling you, who will always tear down her black man. She got a hand on her hip. She rolling her eyes. She's somebody auntie, grandmama, sister. She always talking about the black man. She always telling me stupid, and she tears him down every day.
You know what? You know what's sad about it? I do know. I have heard of Sapphire, and they say warrior, and that we have it very misconstrued.
But when you look at that Sapphire character, Teddy, is that
between warrior and ignorance.
Is that a good character? Is that a proper representation of black people?
No, it's not. It's not a proper representation, but I'm pretty sure it sells.
And it did. And I say this because I wanted us to. So hold on a second.
Because I look back.
I just pulled it up. Hold on one second. I want us to. I'm gonna share this screen, but I want us to see what I'm talking about with this Sapphire character. Right? The WWE didn't even try to hide back in the 80s. They actually named the character Sapphire because they wanted you to know. Now, I love Dusty Rhodes. I love wrestling. But wait a minute. Let's look at this.
Sherry, you know a lot about wrestling, baby, but do you know anything about pain? Ooh, and she gonna learn about pain, no matter where it's at. And the Macho King Randy said, I thought that me and you were gonna do this thing around this country and see who the better man was. I did not think you would stoop as low as making my baby kiss your feet. I didn't think you would stoop.
Let's say Sapphire. See if she say something else again.
With snakes and Macho King Randy Savage. But do you know anything about pain?
So I had to show that, right? Because they were so bogus that I didn't know this as a kid. I didn't know this. I didn't know what Sapphire was. All I thought was, okay, that's a black woman. She look like she from the South, but she loud. No, then I found out what a Sapphire was. Right in front of your eyes, your programming. Right? She's loud. She put her hand on her hip. She go off on you. She'll fight you. But where does she come from? Right? Why is she used? She's used to dominate the black man. This a character here. That's why I wanted to give time and give it to it. She's used to dominate the black man. And she's also used as a tool so that when white people say, listen to that angry black woman right there. That angry black woman. And that's designed to keep the smart black woman docile, quiet, not involved, not aggressive, not opinionated. She can't talk about her feelings, right? Because if she did, she a shrill woman. She loud. She mean. She ain't got no. And so what happens is they show us this, and it creates this idea in a lot of our young women's mind that that's acceptable.
Yeah, it's a guard dog.
And so they follow the idea of the Sapphire. So the caricature now becomes a reality, a Fox reality, right? But a lot of these brothers, right, out here who talking about these black women, they don't know their history. The sassiness was supposed to, it comes from the mammy, right?
Yeah.
You watch Gone with the Wind. She's like, yeah, I get out. She go off and she say things.
Even something more recent, you have Medea, well
Yeah.
known,
Sassy, loud, Sapphire,
and
right?
it teaches the younger women, this is how you need to be. It's sometimes you just gotta get ignorant.
There's an old show called Amos and Andy, where the character's name was Sapphire. That's where it comes from. And she was married to this dude, what is it, Kingfish. Kingfish never, he talked in broken English. He was dumb, but he was always trying to rip off his friends. And Sapphire was his wife that always called him stupid, ignorant, no good, right? You a bum. She was married to him. And he get to saying, but baby, you know, and that's what the way he talk. And so when you see Tommy and you see all these people talk about the black woman who is educated and she loud, she don't want to be, and she'll never say she's sorry, this and that. What they also leave out of that is the idea that a lot of times maybe she ain't complaining that much. Maybe she is educated. Maybe she got her degree. Maybe she got her stuff in order. And she want a man that will be able to equal her. We talked about it in one of these last lessons that the black woman is the most educated person in this country. That's just go look up the statistic. And she's unequal. Because a lot of times the men want her to be docile. They want her to play that, what we talked about with black exploitation. Baby, I'm coming home and you gonna make my food and I'm gonna grab all up on you, but I don't wanna hear your opinion. I don't wanna listen to what you're saying. I don't wanna assume that you are smart. I don't wanna you just gonna follow. I'm not saying that's everybody, but that's what we do. That's the stereotype we allow to play. One of the most famous Sapphires is Esther from Sanford and Son. She always told Fred, you no good. You fish-eyed fool, you bug-eyed fool. She said all these horrible things to Fred.
But
right?
Somewhere along the lines, we took that as our reality.
Because often, Teddy, what we do, we are conditioned through comedy. That's for a whole nother lesson. Black folks historically are conditioned through comedy. The minstrel show was a conditioning through comedy. Amos and Andy is basically a televised minstrel show. And if you start to believe the lie, then it becomes your reality.
Yep. And that there used to be a question. There is still a question on that. Does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? But somebody had to pick up the pen. So clearly, life is just imitating its artwork.
But two stereotypes are going on there, right? The loudmouth screaming woman who is overly aggressive, criticizing the failed man who was a schemer and whatever. That's the other part. That scheming, no good dick, Sambo-like character. Good Times. In Good Times, you also had some of those characters. When you look at the character of Thelma, his sister, she's always criticizing JJ. And over the first season of Good Times was actually a good show. And that's why Esther Roll and John Amos eventually left, right? Because they hyperized the clownishness of JJ. And they had his sister and different others criticize. Philip said, stepping, fetching, and all of them. Yeah. They played this game of critiquing us and not really showing us fully to be who we are. We also have to understand, too, that when we allow these things to happen, as we get ready to close out on this session, when we allow these things to rule our lives, to be a part of ourselves, to hypersexualize the Sapphires, what we do is then we go there and we start tearing down this black woman. You remember earlier in this session, I talked about the placage, right? And I talked about how that plays a part in our society. Because for those of you who weren't here, the placage is an agreement that was made by black women and white men. That's what it is. To be your concubine, to provide babies for you. And if you don't think that that idea of the placage is still around and in our society, then I would ask you to look at what you see, as my sister said, as different people on here said, in music. What you see that's being done in entertainment, in movies, right? That placage is still going on. When you look at that movie, Monsters Ball, I always use that movie. I was going to try to avoid it. Monsters Ball was an example of that, the placage, right? Here you got a woman whose husband is on death row. This white man gets her husband killed, plays part in the execution. And later on, she winds up sleeping with this dude. Matter of fact, at the end of the movie, she finds out that this man was part of her husband's execution. And other than telling this white man that she found out, she's hurt, she cries. Halle Berry character cries. He brings ice cream and they go out and sit on the porch. And what does he say? He said, we're going to be all right. right? We're going to be all right. Also in that movie, he tells her, I'm going to take care of you. She done lost her husband and her son. I'm going to take care of you. And all of these movies still push these ideas of a black woman sexualized and minimized. And then we got brothers who sit here and tear her down.
And further depleting that confidence. It's a crying shame.
Remember, what's that movie with Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor? I like the movie, Harlem Nights. Remember there's a part in Harlem Nights? We all laugh at this part. But again, it's collage, right? Where that Red Fox says, they're going to send that girl over there, Sunshine, right? And the man sleeps with the girl Sunshine. Then he calls his wife and tells her, I ain't coming home. And what he's telling Sunshine is, I'm going to take care of you. We going to run away. So while we sitting there degrading the black woman, while we got brothers sitting here tearing her down, pushing her through these stereotypes that are historic and are foul, we forget those things that she's had to deal with in her past. We forget the things that they've programmed in our minds, right? That she don't love you. She not good for you. But they want her. They want her. They movies show you that they want her. They writings, they music. Beyonce is dang near a billionaire. There's a reason. They want her. And while you sitting there tearing her down, like we showed at the beginning of this show, they telling her, he ain't your equal no more. He a thug, pimp, criminal. I invest. I got a house. I got this. And you see more and more black women marrying white men. Just as you got black men marrying white women, because let's go back to the beginning of this, the idea of what is acceptable and what is foul, and the teaching of that has just ingrained and touched on us in our history. I don't want to go too far over this hour, and I thank everyone. As we see, we got a lot of people that joined us later. I always try to go through and make sure that when we touch on these things, that we give you references. I'm going to give you a lot of references for the things that I was not able to really get into in this topic. And maybe we will revisit it later on, Teddy. But I felt that this was something that we needed to discuss.
And it is. It's very important because it impacts us heavily today.
And we needed to see the historical examples of why it's happening and why we see it. All right, well, I'm going to get ready to sign off for here. Thank you, everyone who came on and put out their comments. Joseph said Dusty Rhodes always looks like he's It's true. It's true. Jada said I was going to say that movie. Yeah, Monsters Ball, Precious. I can go on down the line. There's so many movies that have been pushed out to push these false ideals to women. And
that's what we should have got into, Precious.
And what is scary is just we don't understand that history, and we don't get into that history of why they sexualized us and why they taught us that way. I talked about the women, but the brothers are just as bad. The idea of sleeping around, wanting a woman who was silent and mute and docile, and if not, I'm gonna knock upside her head. It's a lot to get into and unpack. You can't do it in one episode.
The honeymooners,
right? Yeah, buying Zoom right to the moon. But I just wanted to touch on a lot of this stuff today. I thank everyone. Phil said I'm going to go back and watch the beginning, but this is it is a good discussion, and it's something that we all really need to spend more time looking at. We will touch back on it. But ladies and gentlemen, we've gone 5 minutes over our hour. I just want to thank you. Please watch the beginning if you missed the beginning, and listen to that poem. our forgotten grandmothers. I don't often read poetry on here, but I really wanted to share that because that touches on what we are, the beginning of what started a lot of this. All right, Teddy, I'm going to leave you with the last words as we get ready to sign off.
Thank you for tuning in. And as always, let's learn together.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a blessed and great Memorial Day, and we will see you next week. Oh, and my cousin Joseph will be on next week, so I'm excited. All right. Have a good one, everybody.